Today on Light of the Word with Pastor Ray.
And then we look at the world and we look at the government and all the things that we can put our trust in, and so many times they just become empty promises. Well, there's an empty promise, and the word play is meant by me. There's an empty promise of God by an empty cross and an empty grave. And that is a promise to him that life changes through the death and the resurrection. And when you look at an empty cross and an empty grave, there's a promise to me that it is done.
Open your heart to us, Lord, so we can know your word. We come before you, Jesus. Speak to our hearts as we discover your love for us. How wide, how deep, how far. Pour into us so we can learn to follow. One surrender at a time. You have made the way for us to know you. A path that's straight and right. By the light of the word.
We've all experienced it, putting our hope in leaders, systems, or promises that never quite deliver. The world is full of empty promises that leave us searching for more. But in the middle of all that disappointment, God flips the meaning of empty. The empty cross and the empty grave are not failures, but the greatest promise ever fulfilled. Today, Pastor Ray reminds us that because Jesus died and rose again, the promise isn't empty. It's our living hope, the guarantee of forgiveness, new life, and a future. Well, let's join Pastor Ray in the book of Revelation chapter 5 for today's edition of Light of the Word.
Ben Franklin, when he was our ambassador to France, faced and heard much skepticism about the Bible, that it wasn't worth reading, there wasn't anything in there that was worth the time, and he faced much criticism among the people there in France. And he said, hey, I would love for you guys to come over and spend some time with me tonight, and I'd love to read you a love story. And they gather, and Ben Franklin reads to them the book of Ruth. Doesn't call it the book of Ruth, doesn't say anything. He just starts in what we call chapter 1, verse 1, and he reads the book of Ruth. And at the end, they go, this is magnificent. This is one of the greatest love stories we have ever heard. It needs to get into print immediately so that the whole world can hear of it and enjoy this great love story that we just heard. And he goes, it is in print. It's in the Bible. It's called the Romance of Redemption, is what we like to call this book of Ruth, and it speaks such a beautiful picture of redemption as the man goes to the depths and to the extent, whatever it takes, to redeem a bride who was in great need, and we'll get into our story. But as I said to you, it unlocks. And we can say, how can that be so? But it actually unlocks the book of Revelation. And here we go, and I'll read it. You can read it over my shoulder or flip there. But Revelation chapter 5, verse 1 through 7. And I saw in the right hand of him who sat on the throne a scroll written inside and on the back, sealed with 7 seals. Then I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, who is worthy to open the scroll and loose its seals? And no one in heaven or on earth or under the earth was able to open the scroll or to look at it. So I wept much, because no one was found worthy to open and read the scroll or to look at it. But one of the elders said to me, do not weep. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has prevailed to open the scroll and to loose its 7 seals. And I looked, and behold, in the midst of the throne and of the 4 living creatures, and in the midst of the elders, stood a lamb, as though it had been slain, having 7 horns, 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God, sent out into all the earth. Then he came and took the scroll out of the right hand of him who sat on the throne. As we studied in depth, and I'll just recap this as we're going to head back over there into the book of Ruth. Well, what is this title deed? Or what is this scroll, and why is there weeping and in heaven? And the scroll that we're looking at is as we study the book of Revelation, this scroll that we see here in Revelation chapter 5, it's the title deed to the earth. And it's the title deed that was given to Adam in Genesis chapter 1. Have dominion over this earth. It's yours. I give it to you to live. I've created all these things for your pleasure, and it was good. And here is this earth. And Adam was given the title deed, but we know the story, the ultimate Adam bomb in Genesis chapter 3, is him and Eve think that God's withholding something, that there was more, and can't we all feel that way? Lord, why don't I have what I have? I hear there's something better. And here we see they bite into the lie, and that's all that represented, that fruit. And then comes the whole implosion that comes with it. And aren't we all guilty? And haven't we all bought into some type of lie that the devil puts out there for us? Well, then, if we need a conclusive fact to back up this, when Jesus would come and be tempted by the devil himself, the devil says, hey, you know what? Bow down and worship me, and I'll give you all the kingdoms. I'll give you all the glory and the power. And isn't that what so much of man always is looking for? The kingdom, the power, and the glory. Open the newspaper, and it'll always be about man and his kingdom, gaining his power, bringing his own glory, and the likes of these things. And Jesus didn't dispute the devil when he said, it's mine. And the scriptures support he's the prince of this world. He's a squatter now because he's been defeated there on the cross. And ultimately, what we read in Revelation 5 is Jesus now, I've come in Revelation 5, I want to come and take back the full possession of this earth that I paid for and I bought back, that Adam had given up. But John weeps because he's looking, who's worthy? That's going to be worthy. What we read, I think there's close to 800 tiebacks into the Old Testament as we read just the 400 plus scriptures in Revelation. And they all tie back and have allusions in many ways to the Old Testament. And what we're seeing here to redeem, it was called the Goel, the kinsman redeemer. And in Leviticus chapter 25, verse 25, and we deep dived this a couple weeks ago, but I just want to set the tone for this romance of redemption that we're going to read here. Not about the world, but about getting the treasure that's in the world. Leviticus 25:25, if one of your brethren becomes poor and has sold some of his possession, and if his redeeming relative kin comes to redeem, and that's the Hebrew word is goel, then he may redeem what his brother has sold. And so that's what we're going to read, and that's what we're going to see as we look at the book of Ruth, this great romance of redemption. But in Ruth, here in Revelation, through the Old Testament as it was prescribed, the kinsman redeemer of what he would be called, or the Goel, he had three requirements. First, he had to be near kin, so therefore he had to be qualified. It just couldn't be anybody to go and redeem. He had to be able, meaning that he could pay full price. And we'll just sit there. Jesus is going to say, Tetelestai, paid in full. So we see how this correlates into, and these pieces weave together, but he had to be willing. And for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son. God was willing to give the only begotten Son, and the Son was willing to come and pay in full the price to redeem this world back from what Adam had given up. And we're going to see the beautiful picture in the book of Ruth unfold and play itself out for us today. Cannot all of us sit here today? Is there not a one in this room? Maybe there's a one, maybe there's a two that has not driven over that key bridge. And here we are, just a few miles. This is our community. This is our country. This is our state. This is our key bridge. This is our Baltimore. I've driven over that bridge at least 1,000 times. I've driven over that bridge at any and every time of the day, including 1 a.m., including one. I've been through there for whatever it may be, whether it's work or travel or returning from the Northeast, coming down from New York or whatever it may be. And I think most all of us in this room can say, I've been on that bridge. And we live and we just see a randomness of life. We've seen something that we just looked that was always, for like many of us, it's been a part of our life. It's what we know. And here it is. It's gone. our lives will be impacted for years to come. We're going to see that, and we will be making that turn right, and we'll be driving and then see detours because our world is programmed. This is what I do. I turn right. I get on the 695, and then I'm going to be driving and go, that's right. I have to take this detour, and I have to go back around because my life has changed forever. We're going to see an impact and a ramification economically around the whole world because of the key that our port was for this whole world and the supply chain of these type of things. And what I build on here with much weeping, the world has changed so greatly as we look at the Ukraine, as it just goes on and on. It doesn't even get talked about anymore. And yet there's a war with people, with a guy who has nuclear weapons. John weeps because no one had stepped forward at the moment that the scroll came, knowing the scroll is the title deed to the earth, knowing that it need to be bought back. If not, here's why John weeps. Because then everything just continues as is and nothing changes. This world that he's experienced 2,000 years ago, he goes, it just keeps going on and on. Man with his kingdom, men with their power, men with their suppression and oppression, the wars, and then the deaths and the disasters and all these things, and it's just going to go on, and it will never change. And that's why he weeps until the Lamb steps forward. This is a moment in heaven of pure glory. Here is the Lamb stepping forward and stepping in to take this scroll. And I just start with, maybe for you today, you're here today and you're going, you know what? I kind of feel that way. That this is how my life will be, and it will always just be the same after the same after the same, and nothing's ever going to change. Well, there's a resurrection hope and there's an Easter promise. And there is a place, and when we celebrate empty cross, empty grave, I say, man is full of empty promises. If I was to take a show of hands today, there would not be a hand that wouldn't go up. There was promises that were given to me that just became empty promises. And then we look at the world and we look at the government and all the things that we can put our trust in, and so many times they just become empty promises. Well, there's an empty promise, and the word play is meant by me. There's an empty promise of God by an empty cross and an empty grave. And that is a promise to him that life changes through the death and the resurrection. And when you look at an empty cross and an empty grave, there's a promise to me that it is done. And no one has to live in the sorrow, and nobody has to live that life is never going to change for me, because there's a resurrected Savior that's on the move, and he sees you and he's on this move, and we're going to see his great romance of redemption. He's going to invite anyone here today, if you've never given your life to Christ, he's going to tell you this is how you can come to me and have this intimacy with me. And yet for all of us, we're going to see this beautiful promise. All we have to say in any of our situations in life is, Lord, cover me. And he will. Because this is what Ruth is going to ask Boaz, who's a picture of Jesus. So Ruth chapter 4, and I know it kind of goes, how can this unlock the book of, one of the keys of unlocking the book of Revelation? Well, we're going to see this scroll and the taking and the redeeming and how it played in practically. But it's more so, and this is, the end from the beginning type thing that we have here, is God, Boaz, he could care less about the field. Boaz isn't here like, I got to get the field because I need more riches. No, Boaz, he wants the woman. He wants the bride. And here we see this picture here for us. So just to recap the story, maybe you remember it well, but it's always worth a little recap to let you know. The two main characters that we're going to read of, Naomi's the mother, and she's a widow now as we get into this, and her daughter-in-law is Ruth, who is a widow. And so there was a famine in Bethlehem. Ruth and her husband Elimelech, two sons, go to Moab, and find better and greener pastures per se. And we can always feel that way, leave where God has us. Well, they go, and the two sons, they marry these two Gentile women, Oprah and Ruth. And then tragedy strikes. And in the tragedy of it is Naomi's husband dies and the two sons die. And now here's Naomi, the mother, a widow with two daughter-in-law. And she makes this statement and said such a fitting statement. I went out full. This is Ruth chapter 1, verse 19, verse 21. I went out full and the Lord has brought me home again empty. Because she reaches a point, I need to go home. You know, I've lost all, but I need to go home, back to my homeland, Bethlehem, and I need to go there. But when she shows up, people go, is this Naomi? And I don't know if that is that they're looking and going, is this Naomi? Wow, we haven't seen you in 10 years or whatever that may be. Wow, look at you. Or is it they're looking at Naomi going, wow. Man, life has been hard on you. It's hard to even recognize you, what you've been through. And I look at you. I don't know what it may be, but she says, don't call me Naomi. Call me Mara. The word Mara means bitter. And she puts in, I went out full, and the Lord has brought me home again empty. You know, Naomi feels that she's lost everything. Naomi feels what was once full is now empty. So here again for an Easter, for a consideration and for a promise that God would give you is maybe you feel like it's all empty. This isn't what I thought it was going to be. I thought life was going to be fuller. I had no idea that this is what was going to happen to me, that I'm going to not live to the fullness of life. It's a life of loss. It's a life of loneliness and pain and the suffering. And that's why the book of Ruth is such a beautiful story that unlocks revelation, but it unlocks all of our lives is, I see you. And I know Naomi doesn't know it, but before this book ends in chapter 4, she's going to be holding the lineage to the Messiah. She's going to hold the lineage to King David, who has the right to the throne. Matthew 1. Follow that all the way through, all the way to Jesus Christ. And you know, maybe there's a place in you, you just don't. You think life's empty. I don't know what my purpose is. And yet all the while, here's the Lord. He's doing something. He's working something. And Easter and the resurrection and the promises of God are just a beautiful place to bring us back to, Lord, I might not see what you're doing, but you're always on the move. Well, they come back, and here's the by chances, the multiple coincidences that we find in the book of Ruth and how it plays out without reading, you know, the whole book to get to our main covering today as we look at this for Boaz redeeming Ruth to be a bride, is they come home and Ruth says, I need to go get us some food. And so she ends up in this field by chance, and she ends up and she's gleaning, and of all things, she ends up in the field of a man named Boaz. And she comes home and she goes, look at all this food, you know, look at all this wheat and grain and barley. And Naomi's like, wow, where did you find this? Well, I just happened, if you read it, I just happened across this field and the owners let me glean there. And the owners invited me in. And she goes, who? What field? His name is Boaz. And Naomi goes, Boaz? In chapter 2, verse 19, this man is a relationship of ours. He is our close relative, word Goel. He's a kinsman. Wow. Coincidence? From Moab back to Bethlehem? Of all the fields in Bethlehem, you end up in a near kinsman's field? Once again, you can sit here and you go, you know what? I don't think God sees me. I don't think God sees what's going on in the details of my life. I am so alone. I feel so forgotten. I feel so empty. Maybe God is speaking to you personally right now. I saw you. I actually brought you, and I arranged for Ruth and Naomi to end up in Boaz's field. I literally brought you here today because maybe today you're not sure that you have a personal relationship with God. He's arranged all the pieces to tell you this story. And he's making a statement, I see you. and I want to tell you about my great love for you. And so here we go there in chapter 2. God arranges the whole world. And so Naomi, like any mother, I got to do some arranging, and I got to find a husband for my loved one. And she goes, hey, Boaz, he's our kinsman. He could literally redeem us out of our poverty, because what would have happened, and what we see here is Naomi, her husband Elimelech, he sold the property when he left. So they don't have the property. The property has been took over by someone else who's holding it. And she goes, whoa, wait a minute. Boaz, he's a kinsman. He can redeem us, redeem you. So here's what I want you to do. The harvest, when they bring it in, I want you to go down. They're all going to be sleeping down at the threshing floor. That's what they do, the guard it and this and that. And she gives direction. You go down and you lay at his feet. And when he sees you, when he says, what is it? Because Boaz now knows who she is, as we saw there in chapter 2. And you say, he said, verse 9, who are you? So she answered, I'm Ruth, your maidservant. Take your maidservant under your wing, for you are a close relative. Here's what Ruth is saying. Cover me under the shadow of your wing. You know, there is a place for every last one of us. And, you know, for salvation, we'll see. All we have to do is say, cover me. And God does the rest. We can't work it. We can't earn it. We don't do anything other than say, Lord, cover me. Cover my sin that separates me from your holiness. And I believe there's a great power for everyone, for all of us, regardless of where you're at in your life, relational, provisional, health-wise. And I simply just come to the Lord and I say, Lord, cover me. All I have to do is just ask you to cover me. And then I can rest and then trust everything else. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. All your ways acknowledge him, and he'll direct your path. Lord, cover me. Maybe that's for a marriage. Maybe that's in a strained relationship, whatever the situation may be. So she comes, cover me. And here we begin this romance of redemption. Is a beautiful way the story is put. And it's fascinating to me, and it's Easter at its summation of, I love creation science. So I study creation versus evolution. You got to be ready to give an answer. But I just love studying creation versus evolution, science and these type of things, because it just makes the Bible so much richer. You go, man, this, and again, maybe if you're on that fence and you're here and you're just thinking, I don't know if I can believe that there's a God and he can speak into existence. Well, as I will say, as I've studied evolution to, I don't know how many books upon books through the ceiling, creation, books upon books to the ceiling. At the end of it, I had to come to this. Both of them take faith. It takes faith for me to believe that there's one who can speak a world into existence. That takes great faith. But it takes great faith for me to believe that there isn't one, and all this came into existence.
You have made the way for us to know you, a path that's straight and bright. By the light of the world.
You've been listening to Light of the Word. Pastor Ray's digging into the book of Revelation. As there's much to learn from this prophetic book of the Bible, Jesus is described in a peculiar way in this book. He has white hair and flaming eyes. He sounds fierce, but someone to be amazed by and revered. Revelation is a classic case of showing God's power, his authority, and how everything and everyone is in subjection to him. His heart is for people to choose and accept his saving grace, but not everyone is willing to do so. And with that, there are grave consequences. If anything, this book of the Bible is a striking reminder that people need to be saved from themselves, and Jesus is the only way. Don't let an opportunity be missed to tell your friends, your neighbors, or your co-workers about Jesus' salvation. They may not want to hear it, but to reject what Jesus is offering is deadly. If you'd like to talk with us about today's teachings, you can call 443-995-3282. That's 443-995-3282. We have additional resources on our website, including a great devotional that goes alongside this Revelation series. Find out more at lightoftheword.info. This has been Light of the Word, illuminating the heart of God.
You have made